Everybody has that one client. They push your boundaries, they challenge what you're saying, they won't do what you ask, etc., etc. The difficult client. Today's little session is going to be in and around handling them. And the word I use is handling because it is an action, it isn't a fix, it's a way of working with them rather than against them and getting all frustrated. So bear with as we work through this thing and hopefully offer you some work-ons and some practical applications to take out of this video. So first thing, we don't want to think about fixing them. We don't need to convince people. We don't need to change people to become smaller versions of us. That's not the game. They're their own person. They come to you for advice for their own reasons. You're their coach. You're their chosen professional. And so I think a lot of our frustrations can lie in them not getting it or them not seeing the thing as we do. It's just not how the thing works. It's actually our responsibility to see the thing how they see it. And that's what we're going to work through today. So rather than thinking about fixing them or changing them to make things easier for you, what you need to do is shift yourself in order to facilitate the thing for them so that they can understand the thing better. It's an educational process, not a forced process. The root of the problem, as I see it, we as coaches get wrapped up in thinking that this is about us. It really isn't. It's all about them. So as soon as we shift, or we make that paradigm shift, we shift our minds to that point where it's about them and not about us, it relieves a whole load of frustration. It takes the weight off. We're here to help, and that's it. And so then our role, our exploration through the whole thing is finding the best way to help. So the difficult behavior that we experience then is usually our own ego. It's, as I say, our own frustration. And so we can let go of that. And that it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the coach. It's in your power. It's empowering for you that you can manage this situation. Our responsibility is to manage the relationship, not to fix the person. And so in letting go of the ego, in letting go of any sense of value or definition of success around getting the client to do as you ask, in adherence, etc., letting go of that stuff, it can really relieve the pressure that you feel in your coaching practice. And remember that you're there for them. The idea is that you're walking alongside them, you're guiding them through this process. You do that by listening to them, by being open, by being curious, by watching what happens, by being attentive, back to our role, in attending to the client. So through that attending, through that attention that you give to the client, you learn more about them and therefore you can guide them better. This is where we get less difficult clients because now you're connecting to what matters most to them as opposed to what matters most to you, which tends to be where we butt heads as coach and client. In order to do that, we need to try as coaches to stay kind of neutral. We talk a lot about understanding your own biases to try our best to set them to one side because whilst we can't because it's human nature, our biases flavor how we see the thing. They color the scene. And so whilst we've got our own biases at play in the situation, it's very difficult to get to grips with how the client's seeing the thing. And so it's a skill that we learn over time, but it's one that should be practiced. It's one that should be sown in the mind right now. Watch for your biases. Notice what you notice. Notice the emotions that creep up when things are said, when things are done or not done. And then ask yourself the question, why did I feel like that? Why did I respond to that? Because in there'll be some clues in and around your biases as you continue to dig deeper. The more you can get to know those things, the more you can neutralize them, not get rid of them, neutralize them when those emotional triggers might crop up in conversation. In which case then we're not making it about us in that situation. We're still focusing on the client and what they need. So that's the difference then in understanding our biases, in understanding our frame of reference. We can set that to one side and better achieve or better attempt to look at the world through their lens, through their biases and understand where they're coming from. And again, that serves well to relieve the frustrations between coach and client. In order to do that, we need a higher sense of self-awareness. And this is just an ongoing task as a coach. And so, as you can probably sense as where I'm going in the direction of this chat today, a lot of the work to do in handling a different client isn't with the client, it's with you. And that's the good thing, that's the empowering thing. And so I encourage you as the coach then to continue this self-reflection, to continue this self-awareness, self-assessment, whatever you want to call it, self-connection, self-relating. Continue all of that throughout your whole practice. It's not just going to make you better as a coach, it's going to make you better as a human, because work there then, the outcome of that is how you show up day to day in conversations, in relationships. The main one being your work here and the relationship that you're trying to manage between coach and client. Things that you can use to help with that is reflective listening. So it's a theory that a psychologist called Carl Rogers came up with. You can use that as reference and go and read some more about that. But it's the method of speaking back what you heard. Because again, what the client is trying to explain and what you hear are probably going to be two different things. So in that situation, in our coach-client relationship, where it's important that we get to the bottom of what the client's trying to say and understand that thing, the nice tool is, can I just tell you what I've just heard? So they might have said something, right? And the fact of the matter might be that they don't have the words, feelings, emotions to be even able to articulate the thing. And so then what they've said isn't actually what they meant. So when you speak it back to them and say, so what I've heard there is that you're struggling with this thing because of this thing. And they say, oh no, that's not what I meant. And so then you give them another opportunity to try and find the words, and perhaps you can help them with that. But what tends to happen in the coaching practice is the client says one thing and the coach takes that as read and almost uses that as the marker and then a stick to beat them with when they veer away from that. It's like, well, hang on now, you said this thing at this point. So that's what we've been working on. And you never really sense check that. So using that reflective listening can be a really good tool for not only your understanding of what they're trying to say, but also their self-awareness of what they're trying to articulate. Within that back and forth, within that dialogue, within that conversation and relationship that you create in there, that's where you're going to get to the bottom of what really matters to the client, as far as not only the goals within their fitness practice and where you're going to take them, but also their life and what matters most to them, as I keep saying. Just to reflect back on what I said before then, you can see how important it is for you to be neutral and not reactive in that scenario. It's impossible to speak back in a clear and calm tone to the client with clarity, right, around what you've heard, if it's laced with bias, if it's laced with frustration, if it's laced with your own emotion around what they've just said, right? There's probably something on your face, there's probably body language that's happened that's told them that they can feel that, hang about, there's something that's coming with these words. It's not just neutral. So we need to know ourselves well enough in this scenario to get rid of our biases, to neutralize them, in order then to be even able to do this and do this well, so that it doesn't come across to the client as jarring and therefore making them defensive. Next, let's talk about boundaries. And boundaries get spoken about quite a lot today. It's become a bit of a cliche, but it's important. It's important that you set the limits between what your role is in this relationship and what their responsibilities are. And you're both going to have the responsibilities in this thing. It's important to lay that thing out. The reality is that you're not here to save them. You're not the hero of this story. They're the hero of this story. You're here to serve them. Okay? So you're not their savior. You're there to serve them. That's very, very important. Now, I know that you care. You're a coach, you're a good coach, which means that you have all the attributes of a good coach. There can be a tendency when you take those traits too far, those strengths too far, that you become too caring. You become too willing to do the necessary work that those your clients need to do. Whereas you need to create a safe space in which they can play, they can explore, they can fail, right? And then you can talk and reflect around what's happened and why in fact it might have happened. This then is the difference between frustration on your part around them getting it wrong and seeing every step of the way as an exploration for you both to communicate on as you go through it. That's the difference, okay? It's not a fixed path where everything needs to be right and perfect along the way. It can't be. You've got a human being in the mix that's constantly changing, as are you. So any thought or striving towards perfection in this scenario is a waste of time and energy. Rather, the whole thing is an exploration. It's an exploration to find out more about the client and to unveil the story and the pathway that they're going to take forward. So a shift there. You're not here to save them. You're not here to do too much and be overbearing. all that you'll do in doing that is create dependency, which will become frustrating in itself. That will become a difficult client at some point in the future. That will become the challenging client that you have to handle because you've set that tone from the start. You've created the dependency, they've just gone along with it. They now see you as the person that fixes something for them. You now see them, they now see you as the person that saves them when something goes slightly wrong, rather than giving them the tools and the ability to save themselves. That then being the definition of success for this whole thing. Autonomy, self-autonomy for themselves. So that at the time where you're not around and in future when they don't have you as their coach, they can continue to look after themselves. That's managed through you serving them, not saving them. So what to do from a practical point of view when things are getting a little bit sticky? Time is a huge one here. So when I say time, it's inserting pauses in the whole thing. Not being reactive. I know it's tempting when you get a message, whether it's through your coaching software, whether it's in WhatsApp, maybe it's something that's been said in the gym. There's probably an emotional reaction first and foremost. That's one of your biases. Park that. So feel the emotion, but then think about where it's come from. So work it back, trace it back to its origin. Where's that come from? Why did that happen? Again, that's great self-awareness from your point of view. But in allowing that time, it allows the emotions from both sides then to diffuse so that we can get down to the nitty-gritty. Did that really matter? Did they really mean what they said? Whereas if we join that emotional roller coaster, we're on the ups and downs of that thing all the way along. So a tactic would be to inject time into the coach-client relationship, whether that's a slight pause in responding to either something that they've said or something that they've sent to you, or it's time to let the struggle that they're experiencing at the moment play out so that they can feel it and they can therefore start to understand it from an experiential point of view, as opposed to you cutting it off, getting rid of their pain and then filling in the gaps and trying to inject knowledge at that point. Knowledge is useful, of course, but they need to experience it in order to understand. That's that guided failure piece that I spoke about before, where your role then is creating a safe space for that to happen, not in fixing the thing that happens within. Okay, so allow things to play out, give things time, and time, as cliche as this is, does fix a lot of things. We can use reset conversations. So having drawn lines in the sand, and this is important, there must be lines in the sand to begin with. Again, what I see in a lot of coaching practices is a ticking off or a telling off or a coming together based on how the coach sees the thing and how they feel it should be played out, but they've never communicated that with the client. And so then it blindsides the client and the client gets defensive and it looks something like, well, you never said that to me and I didn't know that, right? And all of a sudden we're arguing about a thing. It's like, hang on, we're supposed to be working together here. We're both pointing in the right direction. This isn't me versus you. I'm here to help, for goodness sake. And so the whole thing becomes a nonsense, right? Rather, we draw a line in the sand. We do that first. It can be a difficult conversation to have, but it's a real one that needs to be had. What are your responsibilities in this thing? What are my responsibilities? What's your role in this thing? What's my role in this thing? Let's be clear on that. That can change, but we need to draw that as a line in the sand. Because then when things veer away from it, we have a reference point to go back to. That would be a reset conversation. It could be, let's just grab 5. Should we go and grab a coffee and just return back? So it's like, okay, in your own style, in your own way, it's then returning back to that point. So remember when we sat down and we said that this thing was your responsibility. As far as I can see, that's not happening and you're leaning on me at this point and depending on me to try and do this thing for you. What did we say at the start? That's your responsibility, right? Are we still cool with that? Yeah, I see that now. Sorry, I was getting lost in that and so on and so forth. We can understand it. This isn't their thing. We're teaching them as they go. We know the detail, right? And so again, that relieves the frustration. Remember that they've got all other stresses in life going on outside of this thing. This is just one of their inputs in order to make their life a good one. And so they need our guidance. And so bringing it back to those reference points and reminding them about those lines in the sand that we've drawn can be incredibly powerful, incredibly impactful, and incredibly empowering for them as an individual to say, yeah, that is my responsibility. Sorry, I dropped the ball. Let me pick that thing back up again. So reset conversations can be incredibly useful. Other frustrations can be in and around us veering outside our lane, where We know in here that we don't know the detail around where we're going with the client in a particular scenario. And in fact, it's beyond us, but we're going to try and play it out. We're going to try and manage it because we would rather do that and protect our ego than suggest that we don't know this thing. Flip that whole thing around. We need to be vulnerable. We need to be clear when things are veering outside our lane, because in order to avoid frustration here, you want to be working to your own strengths. And in some ways, they're not going to be found in physical therapy. They're not going to be found in rehabilitation. They might not be found in psychological therapy, etc., etc., etc. They might not be found in functional medicine, whatever the client needs, right, at this point. In which case then, if you've referred out at that point, you're not subcontracting responsibility, you're still managing it, but you're seeking the advice of an expert in that field, okay? So again, there can be frustration and a push and pull back and forth where the client can sense that you don't really know what's happening in that scenario. So referring out can be an incredible tool for you to relieve frustration on both parts, where you're not getting the outcome that you desired because you really don't know what you're doing, and the client isn't getting the outcome that they desired because you've spun them a story that you can figure this out when really you can't. So know what you can and can't do, know where you're up to. Of course, what you can do can be developed over time, but stay true to the essence of your practice. And everything else, then you should refer out to a trusted source. So that would be another tool to manage frustration in the here and now. On from that, then, as far as practical application of this thing, similar sort of vein. It's managing the thought process where you're labeling them as difficult because they're challenging you in areas where you're not strong. Okay, it's like, oh, this client's a pain in the ass, and really it's just that where they're going and what they need is outside of your area of expertise. Again, let go of the ego. Try and neutralize the whole thing. Try and remove your emotion. Try and be as objective as you can in that scenario. What's really happening? What does the client need? Rather than seeing them as difficult because they're pushing buttons on things that you don't yet know too much about, flip it around. You have responsibility then to manage that situation accordingly. Again, can you bring somebody in from the outside? Or can you both go down an area of exploration together? It's like, okay, cool. You want to do this? Rather than me bullshit about this, well, let's find out about it together and let's be open about that. You're my first client that's ever taken part in a triathlon. I've never done it before. I know the principles of training, so I'm well placed to manage that. Would you like to work through it together, or would you like to employ or get a steer from a specific triathlon coach? Right? That might be a scenario that happens. You're giving them the choice. So rather than them being difficult, they know what they're in for. That again is a line in the sand. If things start getting sticky down the line, you can return back to that and say, well, we did agree this. Has anything changed? Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I think we should employ a tri coach. Cool, let's do that. But again, that's more objective. That's actually practical in resolving the thing rather than us both just going round and round and butting heads because they're pushing buttons that you don't know too much about. So flip that thing. Rather than label them as difficult, either learn the thing together and go off on that self-exploration with you being open and vulnerable, or refer out to a trusted source. Another practical thing is sharing your own story of your own challenges through your own growth and journey in fitness, and maybe some external ones in life as well, so that it makes you feel human to them, and it gives them a point of reference that they're not on their own. They're not the only person that struggled through this thing. And that's not to make their thing small, but it's just to give them, I guess, a sense of hope that we can work through this and we can get somewhere with it. Yeah, sharing your own story and where you've had to check your own ego or your own biases or your own frustrations around not getting somewhere at a certain pace or whatever it might be, and having to honor the process and what have you. It can be incredibly empowering again, because remember again, this is new to them. They're here to get guidance from you, to get education from you, and that can be you telling them their story, just like they tell you their story, can be a really good way of doing that. So just to wrap up, hopefully out of that there's some practical application that you can take in managing your own thoughts and emotions around this thing. But I would say most importantly, I hope that it's been a reframe in the way that you look at the whole thing. So rather than it's a you versus them type of thing, remember that you're serving them. right? You're not the hero, they're the hero of this story. You're here to uncover the new story and facilitate their progress along the path of it. It's as simple as that. Frustration then almost dissolves, as far as I'm concerned, if you get that right, where you see each challenge and step along the way as just that. It's part of the process, it's part of the journey. It's an exciting thing. It's like, cool, we've got a challenge. How do we face it? How do we solve this problem that we've got in our way, this obstacle? As Ryan Holiday says, the obstacle is the way, right? So if we're facing challenges and obstacles along the way, it's a sure sign for you that you're guiding them in the right direction. Your role then is in helping them get over those obstacles, okay? Not in pulling them from the other side and removing them for them, fixing that thing, being the hero, etc., etc. Let them struggle, give them time. There's huge, huge value in that. Get comfortable with that. As James Fitzgerald always says, get comfortable in the uncomfortable. That's not just for our clients, that's for us. And I know that a lot of what we just said is uncomfortable because you would like to have control. Rather than control, you're looking for clarity.